me, but maybe it's not, and I don't think that it actually is. I've been, these last 6 months have meant that we've been more around the house. We haven't hardly gone to any of the other places. We never go to eat. Well, we never went to eat before, but that's another story that my wife would be glad to fill you in on. But the whole point is, we don't, we're more at home, we're more bound than we were before, which means that the four walls of our house are closing in on us. And when you're at the house more and you're looking around, one of the things you notice is, gee, we need a little updating around this place. Anybody updated their house in the last 6 months in any way, shape, or form? There you go. Yes, you have, because you've been there, and now you know. Well, Ann started out with me, and she said, Greg, I think we need to paint a room. Well, some of you who know, the first thing I think about is said, well, how much can a few gallons of paint be? Sure, let's paint the room. And then she said, the porch needs to be sort of redone out there a little bit, updated, made a little nicer. I said, well, I guess. And then she said, and we haven't changed the carpet since we've been in this house. And before it was done, well, we haven't done it, by the way, just so you understand. But I'm into thousands of dollars, whereas before I was thinking, well, $50, $100, who cares? And that's the problem. We haven't changed the carpets. You start with a little, and it adds up. Little decisions make a big difference. I was fascinated because I was thinking of this, so I looked it up, and it's true. Do you know the number one reason why people purchase a car? What is the purpose of a car? What is the purpose of a car? Anybody know? And what is the purpose of a car? And by the way, for you online, next week we're going to put up a little computer, and if you have a question or you can answer one of the questions, I'll be able to read it here, and we'll be able to share either online or here in the sanctuary that way. But what do you think is the purpose of an automobile? When you buy an automobile, what is the purpose of the automobile? I would imagine, or I was always under the unknown supposition that you purchased a car because you needed to go from point A to point B. And therefore, the size of the engine, the mileage, or how much it might haul would be relevant factors in the purchase of a car. Do you know what the first two most important decisions are in the purchase of a car are? Color and style. Neither of which have a thing to do with the utility of a vehicle. But people purchase a car based on its color or based on its style. How many of you have heard somebody say, now that car is me? I see that when I see a Lamborghini go by all the time. And says, I need to see it when I see a dump truck go by. That's you, Greg, but anyway, that's another story for another day. You understand what I'm saying. The irony is we make decisions off sometimes the smallest of things that have huge consequences. A brand new car, what are they? Tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And we make that decision on what color it is? It's crazy talk. And we do it all the time. My guess is that the home in which you have purchased, you purchased not simply because you added up the figures, but because you just decided it felt right for you to do it. Most of us, he says, make large decisions in small ways. So let me give you the last point of that, and that is this giant bag of M&Ms. It resides in the church kitchen, and every afternoon I see it. It's been there for some time now, and it is entirely intact. You know why? Because it's unopened. Now, if I opened this bag of M&Ms tomorrow, what would I be able to show you from this bag next week this time? An empty bag. You mean to tell me I would eat, 2 pounds of M&Ms? I would tell you I would never eat 2 pounds of M&Ms. But I would one at a time. And when this bag becomes an endangered species is the moment I tear it open and I take the first tiny M&M. And I will stand here, and whether you're online or whether you're in this room, and tell you, I will not eat 2 pounds. And that is unhealthy. You shouldn't do anything like that. And I mean it. Except if I do it one at a time, I won't realize the consequence of what I'm doing. Now that's in the negative. But turn the proposition on its head. If it is true that I could eat one M&M and then finish it up 2 pounds later, a size I would never have imagined capable of, isn't it also true that if I do just one thing positive, one thing good, and then another and another, it might have pounds of consequence later? One of the things that we need to understand is, in all likelihood, Jesus is never going to ask us to stand before the hostile crowd like Stephen and give our life. But he is going to ask us to make a call to a friend who's going through an ordeal. He is going to ask us to make a witness to someone who has no place to turn, but they can turn to our church if only they have an invitation from you. There are soup kitchens. There's $5 difference of a contribution that could go to a ministry that is struggling right now in COVID. And no, it doesn't change the direction, except if 1,000 other people do it too. And that's the point. Jesus probably isn't going to require us at that moment, like Stephen, to stand on a hill and face down the enemy, and it requires our life. But there are a million other ways in which we can demonstrate faithfulness, and not in the one, but in their accumulation. They make a big difference. I think right now, between now and November, what a witness we could make if we just say to ourselves, you know what, I've got my thoughts on the election. I have my allegiance to how I feel. But how I feel and my thoughts are not as big as the notion that I subscribe to, that I believe in something that is bigger and greater than me alone. And I choose to represent God before I choose to represent an election that will get done over in 4 years, if it's not still going on for that long. But that's another story for another cynical moment. You understand what I'm saying? What would it be like if we could bring grace where there is hostility, where there is distrust between political parties, and we could say, you know what, I know there are people on both sides of the argument, but I believe in God, and no matter how you vote, I know that you are a child of God, and I will see you first as that, and not as a part of a political allegiance on either side of the equation. What if we represented in smallest of ways that we will vote for our party, but we will stand for God? And they're not exactly the same thing. I know it's probably wishful thinking, but if in just small ways we could turn down the temperature and say, you know, I may disagree with you entirely, but I love you completely. You do it all the time. It's called family. Where in the wedding vows, and I've done a bunch of them, does it say, and you will agree completely with your betrothed? It doesn't say that, because we never do. Unanimous opinion is not a part of significant relationships. If we could just decide that we're going to love each other more than we're going to disagree with each other, or as much as we disagree with each other, it's not going to overcome the love we have for one another. We'll get through this fine. It would be a small demonstration that all of us could make, that the presence of God is greater still than how somebody might think of something else. I just offer that as a small way of giving demonstration to a larger thing, because I think that's what the lesson is tonight. Well, the first part is to start, and I asked you to read Genesis, and I think you might want to have wondered what in the world I was doing by asking you to read Genesis, the very first chapter. And the reason I was asking, and really it's not even the first chapter, I just wanted you to read the first paragraph. In the beginning, God created heavens and earth. Now, the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. I want you to think about that for a minute. He says the first thing when we're looking for divine direction in our life is we got to start. Now, I don't know about you, but something that you perhaps don't know about me is that in very few things, but in one thing, I am world class at. I try not to brag because, you know, it might hurt your feelings to know that you have somebody of world-class ability in your midst as your preacher. And so I don't want to humble you by showing what world-class I am this way. But it's true. I am a world-class procrastinator. I can put off undesirable tasks better than anyone. I can tell you, this last year, how many of you know, so everything was different this last year. Well, I don't know if you know, but preachers are called self-employed individuals. That means we pay our taxes as a self-employed individual rather than as an employee. That all preachers do it that way. That's just the way it's set up with the Internal Revenue Service. I'm just one of those people. So I had my taxes due July 15th. Never paid my taxes on July 15th. You know, back in April 15th, they put it off. Taxes aren't due. You don't have to pay them. You can wait till July 15th. I have never paid my taxes a day before April 15th because I don't give my government the money that they owe until the last possible moment. That's just the cheapskate that I am. I've always paid them on time. I've always paid them legally, but I don't pay them early. Ever, ever. Did I say ever to you? So you would think now with what? I had 5 extra months or 4 extra months, I would have had plenty of time to pay them early. Do you want to know what day I paid my taxes? 7/15, July 15th at about 4:45 in the afternoon. Because that's when I pay them. I do it because I say to myself, I don't want to pay early. But you know what the real truth is? I hate doing taxes. I hate doing taxes. I hate it. And I put it off, and I put it off, and I put it off until the last possible moment. I'm probably the only one in the room that puts off doing undesirable tasks. Is that right? We all do. We all put it off. The reason I put it off is because it's just associated with so many unpleasant things that I don't like to do. And in order to start a task, you got to clear the deck. You know the reason why a lot of us start tasks and don't finish them, or we procrastinate doing tasks that we know would be good for us? I mean, everybody knows the favorite day of a diet. Does everybody know when the best day of all to diet is? Does everybody know? It's tomorrow. Everybody knows that. Tomorrow is the best day in the world to diet because you have all of the idea of it, but none of the unpleasant experience. Because we don't want to go through, I'm hungry and I've got, can I tell you this? They tell you to drink more water. A clear glass of water is a poor substitute for a hunger pain in your stomach. At any rate, the problem for most of us, the reason we procrastinate in our decisions is because, well, I don't know about a lot of you, but we hold, and I think unconsciously, prior experience. When I was in college, some friends and I decided we were going to go, because we did this a lot. We would, it was, 4 or 5 hours away from where we lived in Southern California. We would drive up to Bishop, California, which is at the edge of the Sierra Mountain Range, and then we'd go a little bit further, and we would hike in the Sierras. There's something beautiful and invigorating about hiking in the high Sierras in middle California. And one year I was with a group and we were hiking. We'd even don upscale. Most of the time we would just be in a little pup tent and then go hiking. But this time one of our friends had secured a condominium up beautiful, and so we'd spent the night there, and then we decided to go hiking. And we decided we were going to hike the minarets. They're a formation in the High Sierra that just kind of peak up the high, jagged edge, and we were going to climb them. And we were going to take a path that was more difficult than the normal path because it was a challenge, and we're in college, and we thought we could do it. I was the second person. There was one in front of me. We were on this ridge. It was sheer. It was granite. And the one before me dislodged a rock that I don't know, but was about this size. And it came right at me. And I put up my hands, and deflected it off, but then it knocked me down and I fell. I don't know. Everything is larger in my memory than it was in the experience, but it seemed like 10, 15, maybe 20 feet. Scraped me up, bruised my arms, and left the largest gash that is still in my side, right here. It used to be the one thing that I always knew about myself, but Dr. Owens fixed that. I have much larger gashes now all over my abdomen area. But this is a gash that is still there from that fall. I'm probably lucky. It could have been the end of me, and all the rest of my life would have been stopped right then and there. What is interesting and why I tell you that story is, really, except for the cut and the burn and being in the ER and having it stitched up, it wasn't that big a deal. I was sore. It took several weeks to get completely over it physically, but inside of a month, I was fine. I went hiking, not on a trail nearly as severe, about, 3 months later. And I noticed how at every turn where there was any kind of grade higher than me, I, without even being able to stop it, flinched. Like I was ready for the next object to fall from that ledge onto me again. There wasn't any formation, there wasn't any rock, there wasn't anything that would fall. I just flinched because that's where it happened to me before like that. And I continued to flinch because that experience had stayed in my mind. I think a lot of us are unable to go forward because we hold experiences that we haven't let go of. And the ability to start faithfully is also the ability to forget some of those experiences that have scarred us and left a gash in us from before. People, and I see couples in a relationship, and they have trouble not simply with each other, but with prior relationships that they haven't resolved. And so something triggers not something in the immediate, but something that had occurred years before. And because they never dealt with it, they can't go forward from it. The first thing that you need to do is accept that the past is simply that, and that a path forward means a release from what has occurred earlier. That's why the symbol of water in baptism is so important. It washes away our past experiences so we come clean before God. The experiences happen, no denying that, but they are no longer defining of us. We're defined by what we aspire to rather than what has occurred to us. And if we're not able to let go of our past, then we can't move faithfully to God in our future. The first key in being able to start is being able to come clean so that we don't redo the same things we've done before. we start anew. And the church is the one relationship. Christ offers us the singular relationship that says, I see you for what you now pledge, not for what you have been. And it is the capacity of God uniquely to be able to remember our sin no more. And the problem for most of us is not that God doesn't hold it against us, but that we can't seem to let go of it. And we can't move forward until we're willing to let go. And it evidences itself in 1,000 and a million different ways. Old habits. We live our life, oh, well, I need a rainy day just in case something else happens. We set ourselves up with the assumption that somehow we'll fail, rather than that the faith that we have is greater than the foe that is before us. And most faithlessness is because it's rooted in past experience rather than the aspiration of what God offers us. Remember, in new life in Christ. It's not just a pretty term. It really is a mindset that we have to accept. And so one of the things that he begins is just in the most important way of all. Just start right where you are, as you are, knowing that God remembers your sin no more. So I'm running out of time, and I guess I'll get to do, as you're going to find out a lot in my Bible studies, book studies, I will bleed over to the next week. So we'll continue to do chapter 1 and then go into 2 a little bit. But I got to show you this last thing. And it goes back to the introduction a little bit. This is a print. But it will be contained in a journey. And that journey is your life. And no matter what else has gone before, Christ is inviting you to take the first step today. Its destination is the destination of us all. God. Let's get started with the first step. Would you pray with me? Oh God, we give thanks for this hour and for the opportunity that we have to think of new thoughts. That maybe big decisions aren't made in a momentous moment, but they are done in just the smallest of ways. But when we decide, no more with how we've been, but this is how we are. God, accept us as we are and lead us into paths that are everlasting. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all for coming out. Same time, same place next week.